So here we are, wonderful May day, and we're in the upper wall garden at Iford, one of Iford's secret sort of corners, if you like. Not seen by many people thus far, but we've really got a project on up here. This is a part of the garden that I suppose hasn't been gardened properly maybe for 20 years. This scheme was put in, lots of flowering shrubs that have now, I suppose, got to the end of their lives, or at least need some serious renovation pruning. And also an opportunity just to think about the space, the proportion and how it's used now and going into the future. And we're looking today at pruning summer or early spring, early summer flowering shrubs. There's a few examples here which we're going to be looking at. The key one would be this Peony, Paeonia Lutea, Ludlowii. So different ways to prune, of course, and people get quite confused about it all. It's actually quite simple once you understand a few basic rules. So, as I said, today it's early spring, early summer flowering shrubs that are deciduous. And with those kinds of shrubs, we need to prune them straight after flowering. They typically flower on wood it makes the previous year. So what you need to do is to prune early, straight after flowering, to allow the maximum amount of time for that wood to grow and ripen to flower next year. The other reasons for pruning are to, I suppose, to elongate the life of the particular shrub, because you're keeping it healthy, taking out dead and diseased, and also to manipulate the shape. We're in a garden setting, we have to always think about proportion and scale of certain shrubs in relation to what else is around them. So those are the three reasons why we prune, and this is a perfect day to do this one here. So before I start any pruning, I'm actually looking at the space, and here we have a problem really. We've got this peony that's planted far too close to the olaria next to it. If you delve in there, the actual space between them is only about, I don't know, 30 to 40 centimetres. And so really they can't both coexist together. So we're making a decision now about which one probably we want longer term. For me, I think if the peony wins over, but regardless of that, what I'm going to do anyway is cut this olaria hard down. That will stimulate some new growth which we can use to take cuttings, and so then we can make a choice after that, which do we want to keep. But we've also got the potential for cuttings if we do take the olaria out later. So the first thing I'll do is I'll cut the olaria. It's not going to be very technical. We're literally going in as low down as possible, but to a strong shoot. I suppose you would call that renovation pruning. So just see the mass now, and we'll look at the shoots once I've cut them. So, look at that, doesn't that look a bit brutal? But it's not at all. It's really what's needed to some of these older shrubs. And you can see if we look in, what we've done is we've tried to make cuts just above a new growth. So all of these will grow away. It will also stimulate new growth from that cut, and ultimately it will be a better shaped shrub. As I say, the question here is, do we actually want it really close by the peony? We've also found another shrub under here, a little hydrangea. So anyway, that's the first step. So now we can see the peony with a bit more clarity. So we're pruning this peony, and there's a few things I suppose to say. First is really a selection of tools. You can see here I've got secateurs, these are Felcos. A lot of people are now moved over to the Okatsuna secateurs, the sort of industry standard in Japan. I'm still very fond of the Felcos. Good pruning saw, and some loppers. So I suppose we're really breaking our rule a little bit here. It's a bit too early to be pruning this peony. I said we're pruning early spring, early summer flowering shrubs, deciduous shrubs that are finished flowering. This has still got some flowers on. Reason we're doing that here really is to give it the maximum amount of time to regrow for next year. This bit of the garden isn't open this year. You can see we're doing a lot of work in here, and we will be over the coming months. So actually getting in early and doing this is more beneficial for our visitors next year. So we're looking at the shape of the shrub overall and thinking, okay, what ultimately do I want it to look like? We're bearing that in mind, in addition to when we get in there, looking horticulturally at the health of the plant and specific shoots. As with all pruning, you're taking out the dead, the diseased, the damaged, the downright ugly, as people say, at the same time as pruning good strong growth. So you can always look at all this rubbish that's in there. You know, it shouldn't be in there in a healthy, happy plant. So you know, all of that can come out and more. I'm not a lover of this kind of pruning. Sometimes you have to do it where you're cutting down and you're leaving a stub. Sometimes, in this instance, this stub is broken, which is what you'd expect, but it's rather ugly. And so in preference, I think it's much better to prune down, as near down to origin as possible. And with a plant like this, you're really after removing probably about a third, if not more, of these shoots. And you do that every year, and it keeps the shrub young and dynamic and flowering. So taking out the dead, disease, damaged, trying to open up the centre, and we just really start to prune. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward those first two, because literally how do you get your tools in there? But if you start just around the outside, you can create a bit of space by removing some of this dead, and then you make opportunities to get into the middle, because it's the middle where some of the older shoots are, of course, if it's growing outwards. So you just keep on going in that fashion. Sometimes you might just do a little cut like this, but later you might decide to take the whole thing out. That's not a problem. Much better to just take it slowly at the start, because you can always prune more off later, as they say. You can't put it back. And it'll be the same principles with every other early flowering deciduous shrub. Might have slightly different growth, but the principles would be the same. So these two are rubbing here. Usually a bad sign, because it just creates damage to that bark, and then problems can occur with disease getting in. So may well take one of those out. So I'm looking at which one might be best. I think we'll take out this back one here. It's got this stub on, whereas this is growing more cleanly from its single stem. There's also a bud here, which could be quite useful for future. So I'm going to take out all of that one, which will stop this one rubbing on it there. So we're making some progress now. Just a few more. I think if you look here, it's a little bit crowded. Sometimes they just don't look attractive at all when you finish pruning, and that's not always necessary, you know, because what you're after is a better plant longer term and a better flowering next year. So I think if you look at that, there's a nice distribution now, a nice space between all the stems, and there's nothing crossing or rubbing. I think I've got most of these little stubs removed now, and I've pruned down lower, so we're not going to get those stubs with the things that we've pruned this year. And if you stand back, it's still got a shape very similar to what it was in this sort of open vase shape, which is what I wanted. Now the only thing that remains is to get rid of all the prunings.
Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you'll subscribe to get more anecdotes, tips and tricks, behind the scenes tours and other news from Iford as we roll through the summer and into the winter months.